Every day, hundreds of millions of people step into worlds that did not exist before they arrived. They are not handed stories. They are not given finished experiences. They are invited to build, to experiment, and to leave something behind. This documentary is the story of how that invitation came to exist. How a simple idea about creativity turned into global infrastructure. How play became labor, how imagination became economy, and how a platform designed for children quietly reshaped an entire generation's relationship with creation. This is not a story about a game. It is a story about what happens when the power to build is placed in the hands of everyone. Every day, 151.5 million people open a window into a shared digital universe. They arrive from bedrooms, classrooms, internet cafes, and phones held under desks. They arrive not to consume something finished, but to participate in something unfinished. They build worlds that did not exist the day before. They invent rules, economies, and social spaces. They play, but they also make. And without always realizing it, they take part in one of the most ambitious experiments in democratized creativity ever attempted at scale. The scale makes it easy to forget how unlikely this all once seemed. When a platform reaches hundreds of millions of people, success feels inevitable in retrospect. But nothing about this story was inevitable. It began quietly, far from global markets or cultural dominance, with two people staring at a problem that most of the industry accepted as permanent. In 2004, Baszucki and Erik Cassel were not trying to build a hit game. They were trying to solve a structural limitation. Game development at the time was locked behind barriers that few could cross. Professional tools were expensive. Engines were complex. Distribution required publishers. Creation belonged to studios, not individuals, and certainly not to children. If you had an idea but no access to money, training, or industry networks, that idea was unlikely to become playable. Baszucki and Cassel questioned that assumption. They believed the barrier between player and creator was artificial, a byproduct of tooling and tradition rather than necessity. Their question was deceptively simple. What if making a game were as accessible as playing one? What if creativity were the entry requirement, not credentials? What if the act of creation itself were social? That question reframed everything. It meant the platform could not be a finished product. It had to be a system. It had to supply rules, physics, and infrastructure, then step aside. It had to trust users, including very young ones, with creative power. And it had to assume that if given the right tools, people would surprise you. They called the early project Dynablocks. The name reflected its technical heart. A physics-based sandbox built from simple components that could be assembled into complex structures. The blocks mattered less than what they enabled. With blocks, you could model almost anything: a car, a tower, a maze, a game. 2004 was an awkward moment for this idea. The internet was still transitioning from static pages to participatory platforms. Facebook had just launched, but social media as we know it did not yet exist. YouTube was still a year away. User-generated content was not an accepted default. It was an experiment, sometimes a novelty, sometimes a risk. Building Dynablocks meant solving problems that even large studios struggle with. The physics engine needed to be consistent but forgiving. Multiplayer networking had to work on slow connections. Tools had to be powerful but simple enough for a child to understand. All of this had to run on consumer hardware that was far less capable than what exists today. There was no guarantee that anyone would care, no precedent for success at this scale. But there was a belief that creation, if made accessible, would find its audience. The guiding philosophy was restraint. Provide tools, not instructions. Enable interaction, not outcomes. Let the community decide what mattered. That meant resisting the urge to curate too tightly or define what a game should be. The platform would not tell users how to play. It would let them invent play itself. By 2005, the technology worked. The concept was proven, but the name felt wrong. Dynablocks described mechanics, not emotion. It sounded technical, abstract, distant. The platform needed an identity that captured both structure and imagination, something playful enough for children and flexible enough to grow with them. They chose Roblox, a fusion of robots and blocks, mechanical and creative, order and play. The name did not describe a genre or a rule set. It described a place. With the new name came the first beta. A small community arrived, curious and experimental. They built crude games by modern standards. Obstacle courses, simple races, physics experiments disguised as play. What mattered was not polish, but possibility. For the first time, users were not just playing games. They were authors of them. Feedback flowed directly from players to creators and back to the platform itself. The tools evolved in response to what users tried to do with them, not what the founders imagined in isolation. This feedback loop became foundational. Roblox would not dictate culture. It would observe it, then adapt. On September 1st, 2006, Roblox opened to the public. There was no marketing spectacle, no launch trailer dominating screens, just a website and an invitation. Come build something. Roblox Studio shipped alongside the platform. This was critical. Creation was not a secondary feature unlocked later. It was the core. Every user had access to the same tools used internally. There was no professional tier hidden behind paywalls. If you wanted to create, the door was open. The early games were rough, but something unprecedented was happening. A teenager in one state could build a game and watch strangers play it hours later. A child could invent a space, then see it populated by people they had never met. Geography stopped mattering. Credentials stopped mattering. Age stopped mattering. What mattered was whether someone wanted to enter the world you built. Growth was slow at first. Many people did not understand what Roblox was. Was it a game, a toy, a tool, a social network? The answer was all of them, and that ambiguity made it hard to explain. This was before user-generated platforms had trained audiences to accept hybrid identities. The technology struggled too. Servers crashed, bugs appeared. The physics engine behaved unpredictably, but the community tolerated instability because the platform offered something they could not find elsewhere. Agency where competition from established studios was irrelevant because Roblox was not competing on content. It was competing on possibility. No traditional studio could ship a game every minute of the day. Roblox could because its users did. By 2007, the platform had found its footing. Growth was still modest, but it was consistent. The most effective marketing came from children talking to other children, showing them something they had made, inviting them into a world that felt personal. The social layer deepened. Roblox became a place to hang out, not just a place to play. Friend lists mattered. Identity mattered. Avatars mattered. The platform was quietly becoming a social space disguised as a game engine. But sustainability remained an open question. Creation without compensation only goes so far. If Roblox wanted creators to invest serious time and effort, the platform needed to reward them. Not symbolically, but materially. The solution was economic. A virtual currency that could circulate within the platform, assign value to digital goods, and eventually bridge the gap between virtual effort and real reward. In 2007, Roblox introduced Robux. At first, Robux solved simple problems: customization, status, exchange. Players could buy items. Creators could sell access, advantages, or cosmetics. But the deeper implication was philosophical. Roblox was declaring that user creation had value, and that value could be quantified. Unlike currencies in traditional games, Robux was not merely a sink. It was a medium of exchange between users. A creator could earn Robux from other players. That Robux could be spent elsewhere in the ecosystem. Value circulated. This transformed behavior. Creators began to think more deliberately about design. What would players pay for? What felt fair? What enhanced experience without breaking it? Economic design became part of creative design. The platform took a cut, but it also provided infrastructure: hosting, distribution, payment processing, discovery. Without Roblox, none of these transactions would exist. The economy was artificial, but the incentives were real. For several years, growth continued steadily. Roblox found its audience among younger users and hobbyist creators. Then, in 2012, something shifted. Roblox arrived on mobile. Suddenly, the platform was not confined to desktops. It followed users everywhere: on tablets, on phones, in transit, during breaks. The barrier to entry dropped again. Access became constant. Cross-platform play ensured the community remained unified. Device differences disappeared. Identity persisted. Creations traveled with you. User numbers accelerated. The platform felt alive in a new way. Always on, always accessible. Roblox stopped being something you visited and started being somewhere you were. The final piece arrived in 2013, the Developer Exchange Program. DevX. For the first time, creators could convert Robux into real money. The implications were enormous. A virtual economy crossed into the physical one. Effort in a digital space could pay rent, could buy food, could fund education. The age requirement was 13. The threshold was reachable. The path was real. Stories spread quickly. Teenagers earning thousands. Young adults earning more than entry-level salaries. Teams forming. Studios emerging. Roblox was no longer just a place to learn. It was a place to work. This did not happen overnight for everyone. Most creators earned little. Some earned nothing. But the ceiling was visible, and that changed behavior. People invested more time, learned more deeply, collaborated, studied game design, monetization, community management. Roblox did not create these ambitions. It legitimized them. By the mid-2010s, a professional creator class had emerged. Games grew complex, systems deepened, quality rose. The platform evolved to support collaboration, versioning, and teamwork. Roblox Studio matured alongside its users. The platform had crossed a threshold. It was no longer an experiment. It was an ecosystem. And it was about to be tested by forces no one had planned for. That test would accelerate everything. By the time 2017 arrived, Roblox was already something more than a game platform. It was a social system, an economy, and a creative infrastructure operating in parallel. What changed between 2017 and 2019 was not the idea but the velocity. Growth stopped being incremental and became compounding. Millions turned into tens of millions. Games that once struggled to find an audience now attracted crowds large enough to strain servers. Creators who had built quietly for years suddenly found themselves managing communities the size of small cities. External forces amplified this acceleration. Video culture had matured. YouTube and streaming platforms created a feedback loop that Roblox was uniquely suited to exploit. A single creator showcasing a Roblox game could send waves of new players into that experience within hours. Visibility became exponential. Discovery was no longer confined to the platform itself. This changed how games were built. Creators began designing not just for players, but for spectators. Games became more readable, more expressive, more shareable. Moments were designed to be clipped. Systems were designed to be shown. At the same time, Roblox itself was evolving visually. In 2018, advanced lighting and terrain tools arrived. This was not a cosmetic upgrade. It altered perception. Shadows added depth. Atmosphere added mood. Landscapes stopped feeling abstract and started feeling inhabited. For years, Roblox's blocky aesthetic had been a limitation and an identity. Now it became a canvas. The platform did not abandon its visual language. It refined it. Creators could evoke realism without losing abstraction. Worlds could feel immersive without becoming inaccessible. This visual leap attracted a new type of creator. Artists and designers who had previously dismissed Roblox as technically limited now saw room for expression. The platform's ceiling rose again. By the end of 2019, Roblox was thriving. It was culturally present, economically viable, and technically capable. But it was still, in the eyes of many adults, a children's platform. Popular, yes. Influential within its demographic, certainly. But not essential. Then the world changed. In early 2020, a global pandemic disrupted every physical system people relied on. Schools closed, sports ended, social rituals vanished. Children lost not only education, but daily connection. The spaces where identity is formed and friendships are sustained disappeared almost overnight. Digital spaces remain. Roblox did not adapt to this moment, it absorbed it. Usage surged at a rate no forecast had predicted. Daily active users increased by 85% year over year. Infrastructure strained. Engineers worked continuously to keep systems operational. The platform became, by necessity rather than design, a social lifeline. Children hosted birthday parties inside virtual worlds. Classmates met after online school sessions to play or simply sit together. Graduation ceremonies were recreated digitally. Ordinary moments were preserved through avatars. What distinguished Roblox during this period was not just that it allowed communication. Many platforms did that. It allowed shared presence. You were not talking at someone, you were with them, doing something together, even if that something was trivial. Parents noticed, educators noticed, media noticed. By the end of 2020, half of all American children under 16 were using Roblox. The statistic was staggering. This was no longer entertainment, it was infrastructure. Brands followed attention. Virtual concerts drew millions. Artists performed in digital spaces designed by creators. These were not marketing stunts, they were events. Attendees felt something like attendance. The experience was not identical to the physical world, but it was not a substitute either. It was its own category. The term metaverse began to circulate widely, but Roblox did not need to adopt it to embody it. Persistent worlds, user-generated environments, real economies, social presence. Roblox had assembled these elements organically over more than a decade. The pandemic did not create Roblox's relevance. It revealed it. With that revelation came scrutiny. In 2021, Roblox went public through a direct listing. The choice itself was symbolic. The company was not seeking capital to survive. It was seeking validation and liquidity. The market responded decisively. Shares opened well above reference pricing. Valuations surged into the tens of billions. Transparency followed. Revenue streams, costs, and trade-offs became visible. Roblox was generating over $1 billion annually, primarily through Robux sales. Yet it was not profitable. The money flowed outward as much as inward, to developers, to infrastructure, to safety systems. Public status brought credibility, but it also brought pressure. Quarterly expectations replaced long-term patience. Analysts questioned sustainability. Journalists questioned ethics. The most serious questions centered on safety. Roblox's greatest strength was also its greatest vulnerability. It was a platform designed for children that operated at massive scale. Tens of millions of users under 13 interacted in spaces created by other users. Moderation at this scale was unprecedented. Reports emerged of predators exploiting chat systems, inappropriate games slipping through filters, financial systems encouraging spending behaviors that children did not fully understand. Lawsuits followed. Investigations followed. Public trust wavered. Roblox responded with investment. Thousands of moderators, machine learning systems, parental controls, transparency reports, partnerships with safety organizations. But perfection remained impossible. Volume overwhelmed intention. A paradox emerged. The very openness that empowered creativity also created risk. Restrict too much and the platform loses its essence. Restrict too little and it fails its responsibility. The debate intensified around economics as well. Roblox took a significant share of revenue. Critics argued exploitation. The company argued infrastructure. Both were partially correct. Without Roblox, creators had no market. Without creators, Roblox had no value. There was no clean answer, only trade-offs. Despite controversy, growth continued, but it was changing shape. Children who had joined Roblox in its early years were not leaving. They were aging. Teenagers became young adults, and they stayed. By 2023, the 17 to 24 demographic was the fastest growing on the platform. Engagement hours skewed older. Creation became more sophisticated. Teams became more professional. Roblox was no longer just a childhood platform. It was a generational one. Geographically, the platform diversified. Asia Pacific became the largest user region. Europe strengthened. North America remained economically dominant, but no longer numerically overwhelming. Roblox became truly global, and with that came regulatory complexity and cultural nuance. Gender balance stabilized near parity. Unlike many gaming spaces, Roblox did not skew dramatically male. The diversity of content supported diversity of audience. Became a natural extension. Schools adopted Roblox Studio as a teaching tool. Programming, physics, design, and collaboration were taught through creation. Students learned by building and sharing. What had begun as a sandbox became a curriculum. By 2026, the numbers told a clear story. Over 150 million daily users, nearly 400 million monthly, billions of hours spent not consuming content, but participating in it. The platform evolved again through artificial intelligence, asset generation, dialogue assistance, real-time translation, creation accelerated, barriers fell further. Vision mattered more than executional labor. Roblox Studio modernized. Collaboration tools matured, commerce APIs expanded. Creators ran businesses entirely inside virtual worlds. Some sold digital goods. Others sold physical merchandise connected to digital identities. The economy deepened. Virtual real estate had value. Limited items became assets. Entire livelihoods existed inside digital space. Roblox had not become a single metaverse. It had become a framework for millions of them. What emerged by the mid-2020s was not a platform that replaced reality, but one that intertwined with it. Roblox did not ask users to abandon the physical world. It absorbed fragments of it, mirrored social structures, and gave people tools to reconstruct meaning when physical systems failed or fell short. The demographic shift was no longer theoretical. Adults were not guests in a children's space. They were participants in a shared ecosystem. Some were there to build, some to socialize, some to earn, some simply to observe. The platform accommodated all of them without formally rebranding itself as adult or child-centric. It remained deliberately ambiguous, and that ambiguity allowed continuity across life stages. This continuity reshaped identity. A Roblox account was no longer something you aged out of. It became persistent, an archive of creation, a record of social connection, a professional portfolio for some, a nostalgic anchor for others. With that persistence came deeper questions. Who is responsible for what happens in a world no one individual controls? What obligations exist when virtual economies generate real income? How do you protect the most vulnerable without collapsing the openness that enables everything else? Roblox did not solve these questions. It lived inside them. Artificial intelligence accelerated this tension. AI-assisted creation made building faster and more accessible, but it also multiplied output. Moderation systems had to process exponentially more content. Distinguishing intent, context, and harm became harder, not easier. Yet AI also enabled safety. Pattern detection improved. Harmful behaviors were identified earlier. Language translation reduced isolation and misunderstanding. The same tools that empowered creators also empowered guardians. This duality defined Roblox maturity. Every innovation carried benefit and risk in equal measure. Economically, the platform became less about individual success stories and more about systemic impact. Thousands of creators earning modest but meaningful income created a middle class of digital labor. Not influencers, not celebrities, workers in virtual space. These creators treated Roblox as infrastructure. They expected stability, fair rules, predictable systems. In response, Roblox increasingly behaved like a utility provider rather than a game publisher. Updates prioritized reliability. Tooling prioritized scalability. Communication became more formal, more measured. Public markets demanded growth. Regulators demanded compliance. Users demanded trust. The company stood at an unusual intersection. It was simultaneously a social network, a creative engine, a children's space, a labor market, an educational tool, and a financial system. Few institutions had ever been asked to carry that many roles at once. Roblox's answer was not reinvention, but reinforcement. It returned repeatedly to its original philosophy: provide tools, enable community, observe outcomes, adjust systems, repeat. This iterative posture prevented stagnation. The platform never declared itself complete. It framed itself as ongoing. Critics argued this was avoidance. Supporters argued it was humility. Both interpretations held truth. What became undeniable was legacy. Millions of people learned to create inside Roblox before they learned to consume professionally produced media. They grew up assuming participation was normal, that systems were editable, that worlds could be rebuilt. This assumption quietly reshaped expectations beyond the platform. Young developers entered other industries with a bias toward openness, toward modifiability, toward community-driven design. Roblox did not just teach tools, it taught a worldview. The worldview said that complexity could be approached gradually, that mastery was earned through play, that failure was part of creation, that distribution was not a privilege granted by institutions, but something embedded in the system. The economic worldview was equally radical. Labor did not require offices. Value did not require physical goods. Collaboration did not require proximity. Work could be playful. Play could be productive. These ideas were not invented by Roblox, but Roblox normalized them for a generation. The platform's influence on the broader technology industry was subtle but pervasive. Competing platforms adopted creator monetization models. User-generated content moved from novelty to expectation. The line between developer and player blurred everywhere. Even skepticism toward the metaverse concept often traced back to Roblox's existence. Critics could not dismiss the idea outright because Roblox had already demonstrated it at scale. The unresolved question was sustainability. Could a platform built on openness survive regulatory tightening? Could it maintain trust while serving children and adults simultaneously? Could it resist the temptation to over-optimize monetization at the expense of creativity? The next decade would answer those questions. As of 2026, Roblox stood as proof rather than promise. Proof that democratized creation could scale. Proof that virtual economies could support real lives. Proof that community-driven systems could endure. It also stood as a warning. That scale magnifies consequences. That responsibility grows faster than infrastructure. That vision must be defended continuously, or it erodes. The founder's original insight remained relevant. The barrier between creator and consumer is artificial, but removing that barrier transfers responsibility to the system that replaces it. Accepted that responsibility imperfectly, visibly, and in public. And still, people kept building. They built because the tools were there, because the audience was there, because the belief that anyone could create had been reinforced millions of times across millions of worlds. The platform did not succeed because it eliminated friction. It succeeded because it made friction navigable. learnable, shareable. Distinction mattered. Roblox did not power imagination by telling people what to imagine. It powered imagination by refusing to decide for them. That refusal, sustained over decades, became its most important design decision. What remains at the end of this long arc is not a verdict, but a responsibility. Roblox's story does not resolve cleanly because the system it created is not static. It is alive, shaped daily by the decisions of millions of users whose intentions range from playful to professional, from generous to harmful, from experimental to exploitative. Any attempt to reduce that complexity to a single moral conclusion would miss the point. The platform's greatest accomplishment was not technological, it was psychological. It normalized the idea that creation is not reserved for experts, that worlds are not handed down finished. That participation precedes mastery. For an entire generation, this became intuitive rather than aspirational. Children did not arrive at Roblox asking how to play correctly. They arrived asking what they could make. That orientation matters. It shapes how people approach systems long after they leave a particular platform. The economic implications followed naturally. If creation is normal, compensation feels justified. If collaboration is default, entrepreneurship feels accessible. If distribution is built in, ambition feels realistic rather than abstract. Roblox did not guarantee success. It offered possibility. The distinction is critical. Possibility is empowering precisely because it does not promise outcomes. It invites effort rather than entitlement. The creators who succeeded on Roblox were not anomalies. They were early indicators of a broader shift. Digital labor, platform-enabled entrepreneurship, and creator-driven economies are now structural features of the internet. Roblox simply demonstrated that this model could begin in childhood and persist into adulthood. The educational impact reinforced this continuity. Learning through making collapsed the distance between theory and application. Concepts were not memorized. They were tested, broken, rebuilt, shared. Knowledge became communal rather than hierarchical. Even the platform's failures contributed to its influence. Public debates about safety, monetization, and moderation forced society to confront questions it had postponed. How much freedom is appropriate in spaces with children? What responsibility platforms bear for user behavior? How value is extracted and distributed in digital systems? Roblox became a case study not because it was perfect, but because it was unavoidable. As regulation tightens globally, Roblox will continue to evolve. Identity verification will become stricter, economic systems will be scrutinized, content moderation will become more formalized, some openness will be lost, some trust will be gained, trade-offs will be unavoidable. The platform's survival will depend on whether it can adapt without abandoning its core insight. That imagination flourishes when people are trusted with tools rather than constrained by rules. This insight is fragile. It requires restraint from those in power. It requires patience with imperfection. It requires a willingness to accept messiness in exchange for possibility. Few large systems manage this balance for long. Roblox has done so longer than most. Its future will not be decided by technology alone. It will be decided by governance, by cultural stewardship, by whether the platform remembers that its value does not come from content, but from capacity. capacity to build, to learn, to connect, to earn, to fail safely, and try again. In 2004, two people believed that if you gave users the means to create, they would exceed expectations. That belief has been tested at scale. It has been strained, challenged, and criticized, but it has not been disproven. Every day, millions of people still log in not because they are told to, but because there is something they want to make: a world, a game, a space to meet, a system to explore. That impulse is the platform's true product. Roblox does not sell games. It sells permission. Permission to imagine, to experiment, to participate in building shared reality. That permission, once granted, is difficult to revoke. And that is why Roblox matters. Not as a brand, not as a stock, not as a trend, but as evidence that imagination, when given infrastructure, does not retreat in fantasy. It organizes itself. It collaborates. It builds economies. It creates culture. The story that began in 2004 is still unfolding. Not because Roblox insists on growth, but because the people inside it insist on creation. The platform's legacy is not a set of features or milestones. It is a mindset. That mindset says the world is not finished. And neither are you. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever built something inside a digital space or wondered how platforms shape the way we think, create, and connect, consider supporting this series. Subscribe to the channel for future documentaries exploring the hidden systems behind the technologies that we live inside. Share this video with someone who grew up creating, not just consuming. And if you have your own story with Roblox or any platform that shaped how you learned to build, leave it in the comments. The story of imagination is never finished. It continues wherever people choose to create.